Hey everybody, it's Matt, Wrestling with Whiskey, back again. Today I've got a little double dose of store pick action for you. You might remember several weeks ago, I reviewed a Joseph Magnus pick, which was an MGP 14 year from a store called Cask and Cellar in Indiana. This is the same store. They're starting to get more picks in that I've noticed, so I want to check out these because I haven't had a ton of Maker's Private Select. I've had a couple at bars and I've had a couple from samples, but not a huge variety like I have some other store picks. So I'm very curious to have these, especially two picks from the same store with two different stave profiles, as is the kind of the gimmick, if you will, of the Maker's Private Select. So a little buffer on that. If you're not familiar, most store picks and single barrel selections, they basically roll out barrels for you. You try it, and you get to buy that entire barrel. That's pretty standard. And you get that one barrel. It's a unique flavor profile to that. Maker's Mark takes that a step further. They don't offer just straight up barrels. They offer barrels with stave finishing. So if you've ever had Maker's 46, where they have certain amount of French oak staves and different spiced staves thrown into the barrel to mature with it for a little while, these work in a similar way, but you get to choose the different kind of staves that they put in there. So for example, I'll read from the back of the bottle because there's options here. You can have Baked American Pure 2, Seared French Cuvée, Maker's 46 stave, Roasted French Mocha, and Toasted French Spice. And you can have those in any combination. 2 of this one, 3 of that one. 1 of this one, 1 of this one, 1 of this one, etc. In whatever kind of combination you want. So, what we have here is the Cask and Cellar picks, 2 different ones, one entitled, French Solstice. Yes, they're very fancy over there at Cask and Cellar. This one is supposed to be a little bit lighter, like spring, a little bit more fruity and floral. This one has 2 seared French Cuvée, 4 roasted French Mocha, and 4 toasted French Spice. The second is French Harvest, supposed to be a little bit more spicy and bold, representing fall, things we like in the fall and winter. And this is 2 seared French Cuvée, and then 5 roasted French Mocha, and 3 toasted French Spice. So these aren't crazy different in the stave selection. And yet, apparently, from what I've been told, they have offered different profiles, which will be fun to see. So, without further ado, let's dive into these 2 Maker's Private Selects from Cask and Cellar. Alright, first, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Solstice, because this one's supposed to be lighter, a little bit more floral and fruity, so let's start with that one and see how that one affects the palate. So, this one is 108.1 proof, that's 54.05% ABV. These are non-age stated, and the finishing time is supposed to be somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, I believe. Sometimes they go a little bit longer, and so on and so forth, but that's what I've been told. I heard these might have been in there a little bit longer, which actually to me could be a good thing, because I like things, especially when it comes to finishes, that are a little bit longer than the average. I love long finishes. So, once again, this is 2 of the French Cuvée, 4 of the roasted French Mocha, and 4 of the toasted French Spice. This is French Solstice. Cheers. So this one is, despite being the Solstice, there are some rich, deep notes, kind of almost harvesty. I can't wait to see what you have. But I am getting more of those floral notes on top of the deep caramels and nougat kind of things. There's more of a light, florally rye spice kind of on the top of it. Does seem a little bit lighter than, especially given the proof, given we're over 100 proof, which Maker's Mark only really does with their cask strength release, and I guess technically Maker's 101, but that's not all over the place yet. Yeah, bacon spices, some cinnamon on there and stuff too. So let's take a sip. Lots of spice on this one. Normally it hits you somewhere kind of just once in the palate. This is going front to back, covering like the whole roof of my mouth with that almost Kentucky hug, rye spice, florally spice. You can imagine that on both of these, and to be fair, on a lot of the Maker's Private Selects I've had, these toasted staves add a lot of extra character, especially because between you and me, it's no offense, I find regular Maker's Mark is a solid bourbon, but I find it very, especially, given it's a wheater, pretty bland. I like the rye spice. That's why I generally like higher proof wheaters, because they bring back some of that spice that is sometimes eliminated by the sweet wheat as your flavor grain. So this is actually very, very nice in that regard. Yeah. Pepper, rye, baking like cinnamon spice, some lighter floral and fruity notes, some cherries and stuff sitting on the finish. It's a nice, warm, longer finish, which I like, especially that. Maker's Mark isn't all wheated. All their releases are wheated mash bills. So this is a nice spicy release for a wheated bourbon, which is really nice to have. It's pretty bold and rich, which, like I said, I was kind of given the impression this is the lighter one, so kind of either A, just I'm picking up on more of the deep notes, or B, this one's going to really kick it in the teeth with those deeper, rich notes. Excuse me, but you definitely get some of these lighter, more tingly, spicy and floral notes on this one. That is for sure. How will the French Harvest compare? I don't know. Let's find out. We are back. Maker's Private Select from Cask and Cellar. We are now moving on to the second of the store picks, Private Selection, the French Harvest, which I was told was supposed to be a little bit more bold and deep and spicy, kind of, flavors of fall, those rich, caramels and things like that. Just to remind you, this is 2 seared French Cuvée, 5 of the roasted French Mocha, and 3 of the toasted French Spice. So this is only a really 2 stave difference from this one. This one had, in that same order, 2-4-4, and this had 2-5-3. So it's not like it's like 5-1-1 and totally different. And so that's why I'm excited to see what the differences are between these. Cheers. Right off the bat, the same spice is kind of there, but there's definitely more of a rounded caramel vanilla. Black pepper hanging over it, kind of, the whole thing. A little bit of like cinnamon apple almost underneath there. I'm gonna nose these next to each other now. Again, this is only being a couple of staves different. This definitely is still lighter. A little bit more herbally, fruity. This one's a little bit bolder. That's really cool, actually. Looking at the back of these, I wouldn't think they'd be that different. I'm sorry, I never even read the proof on this one. This one's almost the same exact thing, 108.2. Instead of, what is it? This is 108.1. So, literally, same exact proof. Neither of them knows like they're over 100 proof, so that's kind of a nice thing. Let's take a sip. Definitely more of a caramel apple bomb. Again, the spice is not as enveloping as on this one. I find it a little bit more just hanging out in the middle of the palate, as opposed to just kind of rolling over the entire thing. So the spice is a little more subtle. The vanilla and everything is drawn up a bit and a little bit bolder. 100% more caramel, and also some like tobacco leaf and stuff in there. A little bit more subtle and subdued in the fruit notes. A little bit bolder in the kind of rich notes, if you will. I know my palate has kind of been exposed to both, but I'm going to kind of try to take a sip of both side by side. Yeah, light spice starts up front, rolls all the way back. There's tons of spice on that one. And then this one, good amount of spice, bolder, vanilla, caramel, a little bit of like candy apple in there, a little bit This is more, I don't know, like summery rye spice, and things like that. This is a good amount of spice, but it's more like cocoa, cinnamon spice. Candy apples, again, sweet flavors. And so that's actually really cool, because I did not expect these to be that different, which just goes to show you the fun you can have with the Maker's Private Select line. I've always been a fan of just, straight up finding barrels that are different as far as single barrel selections go. So to do that and then add upon it with the stave selection is actually, it's a little bit more variable than I would have imagined. And even just a couple of staves different can make the big difference. If I had to choose between the two, I'm going to go with the Harvest, maybe because it is still winter time here, very, very much in Chicago. But if you've watched these, you know I like a little bit of these bigger, bolder caramels, vanillas, classic bourbon flavors. Hit you in the gut, hit you in the mouth with bombs of vanilla and caramel and nougat and nut and all those kind of things. So I really like the Harvest. Both are very good. Both are very different despite seeming similar on the back. So if you're in the Chicago area or the Northwest Indiana area, Cask and Cellar has both of these available. These were very, very good, and I might try making cocktails with them, see what kind of old fashions they make, or Manhattans potentially, because they have enough spice. Normally I don't like a wheated bourbon in an old fashioned, but especially this one though might do the trick. So thank you guys for watching. Always take a look out for what's new in the bourbon world. These are great examples, the different kind of variations. So even if you've seen one at your local store before, take a look at the back. Look at the stave selection. Even if it's a couple staves different than something you've had before, it might be worth trying. So always be looking out for that. Always be trying new things, thinking about your bourbon. Have something to say and share it with your friends. And always, always, always be wrestling with whiskey. See you later.